According to new live register figures, over 700 people have been on the dole for more than 20 years. 8,633 people have been unemployed for more than 10 years, and that's 4% of the total. So why are these people on the dole for so long, despite the demand for people to work in our economy at the moment? Well, I'm joined on the line by the Minister for Employment Affairs and Social Protection and Fine Gael TD for me, the East Regina Doherty. Minister, good morning.
Morning, Pat. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. It is intriguing because, if people were unfit to work, they would be in your disability programme, not on the dole.
Yeah, you would think that. But there's a lot of people who have lots of ability, but they still have barriers to the employment, to the workforce. So they have maybe more suitability to work in what we would consider non-conventional type employments. And I think when you look at historically the way we've looked at activation in this country, it's always kind of genuinely been the same. We have made changes to it, and we made significant changes, the department did, in 2011, in how we approach helping people, and particularly our style and the introduction of all of our new Intrio offices, coupled along with Richard Bruton's Action Plan for Jobs, resulted in a jobs-led recovery and we all know that history, I don't have to tell you. But what we're doing this year is having a look and potentially an overhaul for the next generation of activation requirements.
Yeah, but what are we going to do about the people who've been, I mentioned the number over 20 years. Some people have been 30 years on the dole.
Yeah, well, what we've done in the last year is to recognise that there are genuine barriers to employment for the people who are on the live register, but there still is a willingness to want to work. So some of the programmes that we've introduced
Are you sure there's a willingness to work?
Yeah, no, I absolutely am. I think we need to break the stereotype, and you can see the numbers have dropped significantly, and everybody's talking about it now coming into full employment. The vast majority of people on the live register are in benefit and are short-term unemployed, so they're just between jobs for either a number of weeks or a number of months. There are people who are stubbornly on it for very, very long periods of time, and I think it's quite obvious to me that some of those people potentially shouldn't be on the live register. They should be on some of our other schemes. But most of those.
But why are they not moved on then by your officials? If you're not fit to work for reasons of health, ill health, for example, then you go on to disability. Now, it costs the state the same money. I'm not saying you'd save money by doing that, but at least they would be categorised honestly, rather than.
Not everybody wants to categorise themselves as never being able to work again. So the employability programme, for argument's sake, helps people who have mental health difficulties. They don't want to go up and live in their kitchen for the rest of their lives. They want to be able to participate when they can participate, and we need to continuously encourage that. The ability programme are for people who have intellectual or physical disabilities. We don't want to tell them you don't have any value in the economy.
Therefore, are these headlines a bit unfair unless we break them down by category? Because the impression that there are 700 people who haven't worked for 20 years and a fraction of those haven't worked for 30 years, and you get the impression these are malingerers. These are people who wouldn't be bothered getting up out of bed, to spend their time smoking fags and going into the bookies and drinking pints. That's the stereotype, right?
And it's not fair, and it does need to be broken. And that's not to say there are some people who you've just described, right? But the vast majority of people want to be able to participate and earn more money than the 198 quid that they get from the state every week.
Yeah.
But that's not to say there are some people who genuinely don't know how to get up every morning and dress themselves and present themselves at the same time ready for work. We need to recognise that and help those people learn those skills. There are some people who don't have the confidence. And also, I think the stark reality is that there are buckets and buckets of employers out there who wouldn't employ somebody who hasn't had a job for 20 years. So we need to recognise what the real barriers to these people are, the 8,633 people who are real people with real lives and have aspirations to want to be able to, but wanting to be able to and actually being able to do are two entirely different things. And it's up to us now to provide the next generation of support with the current issues that face today's society.
But some of these people who, as you say, have been out of work for 10 years and had, decent working lives, and then suddenly in the recession they couldn't find a job that was appropriate to their skills, or they were offered Mickey Mouse jobs that they felt was, not appropriate to what they were capable of. Not everyone wants to, serve burgers and chips in a fast food joint. But then the longer you're out of touch with the employment world, the less employable you are.
That's the problem. So we're going to come up with new initiatives. I've made 2 decisions in the last year that have been enacted in the last week. One is to look at what we would call our supported work environment, our CE work environment. And we've been governing that with rules of employment activation for time immemorial. I think we need to recognise and stop and say, for a lot of people, it isn't work experience. It is real employment. They're providing real valuable services in every town and county in the country that each of those town and counties wouldn't be able to do without. But let's recognise the valuable contributions that those people are making, and let's reward it for being the real valuable work that it is. So we're going to do an analysis of that in the next couple of months and maybe separate the activation part of CE with the community social inclusion part of CE and define it with different rules. The second thing that we need to do is genuinely recognise that there are people, and thousands of them, as you can see, who do not have the confidence or the support systems currently in some of our activation schemes to be able to help them get back into either full or part-time employment. And some of the schemes that we're looking at this year, we have a real problem with over 55s, and that's historical. People think that people who are over 55 are old. I'm not far off 55. I'm far from old. And we just made and changed the law to allow public and civil servants change their working lifestyles till they're 70 if they want to. People are living longer and are more active lives, and employers need to recognise that. We have a scheme coming on board soon to incentivise employers to take on people who are over 55s. In order to break the stereotype of over 55s, we're going to try a pilot project to move towards a cognitive CV, which doesn't tell you where the person lives or what age they are, but gives you their skill set to tell you that whether they would be appropriate to work in Newstalk or not. We're going to try new initiatives.
Yeah, people are texting me, shortage of tradesmen and builders should spawn training programs in those areas. That's from Betty. I know they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and it might not be appropriate for someone who's worked in an office all their lives suddenly to be training to be a brickie. That's probably not going to happen.
No, but the world of work is changing, and I know IBEC came out this week and said that we need 66,000 people in construction, but maybe they're not all of the people that are on the live register, because if you look at the profile of the people who are on the live register, the ones who are on it longer term tend to be our youth unemployment, which thankfully is dropping, but again, those younger people have particular sets of issues, our over 50s who have another particular set of issues. The people who are in the middle, who are the short-term unemployed, are the active coming on jobs, or the people who can retrain with our Jobs Path programme for the last number of years. But we're getting to a stage, everybody's talking about full employment, and that's great, and the economy is booming, and that's great, right? But I know I have a considerable amount of people who want to work, who don't have the skill set, and we need to recognise that the world of work is changing, and maybe the skills for the jobs that haven't even been created yet are where we need to look for.
Now, I know that intern programmes can be used, but there's always the concern that employers just use interns as free labour or cheap labour, subsidised by the state. But it would be a way for people who are in a particular environment and who've been out of it for 10 years could get back in and show, well, I haven't lost it, I can still do it.
And the first thing I'll say to you, Pat, is that it's illegal to take on an intern without paying them anymore. So we've changed that. And despite the political opposition to it, which doesn't always mean, the same in reality, Jobs Bridge was a programme that Joan Burton brought in a number of years ago when we had 450,000 people unemployed in this country. And it was one of the most successful programmes that took interns into employment that we've had probably forever in Ireland. So there is merit in looking at all of these things. This year, we're going to, coincidentally, Pat, we come to a scenario where our Jobs Path programme tender comes to an end and we'll be looking to re-tender. Coincidentally this year, the European Union are making us look at how some of the other services that we have with regard to our jobs clubs, our local employment services, our CE clubs, our jobs fairs, they'll need to be tendered. I think it's a really great opportunity for us to work collectively together to say, what does this generation of Irish people need, given that the world of work is changing, and given that we still have 8,633 people who are presenting week in, week out saying they want to work, and we need to specifically address the barriers to those people getting work. And it might be only part-time, that might suit them.
Again, some people say that there are people claiming disability who are not at all disabled. Do you have any monitor on those?
Of course we have. Again, first of all, can I tell you, there will always be people who are claiming something that they particularly mightn't be able to be absolutely entitled to, right? But we have a view in this country, and I don't know whether it's the same in other countries, we have a view in this country that we target everybody with the same brush, and it's so not true. We have inspectors in all of our schemes. We have inspectors in our child benefit scheme. If you get your child benefit through the post or straight into your bank, you get called to prove that you still have your same children in your same school every single year. We have inspectors in our job seekers, in our disability, in our illness payments. Every single scheme that we have is inspected because we have to report to the Controller and Auditor General every single year. That's the norm. And yes, there are people maybe that we don't catch, but that is not the norm. Now, the norm is people are presenting to work who want to work.
And people are echoing that view. Please stop the ignorance. Regina Doherty is dead right in the hidden reasons why some people can't work. Sympathy and help is what is needed. The state can employ these people in creative ways. That would be a way to help. Another one, the Minister said there are some malingerers, but the vast majority of those out of work are genuine. With respect to the Minister, she's absolutely no idea how many are genuine and how many are not. If she did, presumably she would have dealt with the chancellors already.
Again, I would have to tell you, that's the stereotype that we need to break. And the knowledge that some people in this country have is that maybe they don't understand that people who are on disability payments are actually encouraged to work and allowed work. People who are single parents are encouraged to work and allowed work a certain number of hours every week. So there are people that we all see in our villages who are on disability, who may be in the bookies on a Tuesday afternoon or in the pub on a Friday afternoon. But that doesn't mean that they're not working the 15 hours a week that we absolutely encourage them to work for, not just because of the good and the positive impact it has on their own life, but obviously because of the good impact it'll have on the economy. There are different ways to skin a cat. The gentleman that just texted you in that said we need sympathy and encouragement, I would tell you we need ambition for these 8,633 people because they have it for themselves. Because if they didn't, they'd already be on a disability.
So somebody says people choose not to work and the state allows this. If they had no money, they'd learn pretty quick. Carrot and stick, says Declan in Carrickmacross. I mean, when you look at our systems compared to others, and it's good that we have that safety net so people don't starve and people can get a roof over their head, and we have HAP to help people. We've we've housing benefits and so on. But are we too generous?
First of all, I would tell you no, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to you. Living on €198 a week is no picnic. And all you have to do is ask anybody that has to do it consistently, and they will tell you that it is no picnic. And again, the stereotype doesn't match the reality for the vast majority of people. Yes, there are some people who are on the live register that are doing mixers and have 52-inch flat screen TVs. That stereotype is tiny. And yet we choose in this country to, make everybody the stereotype. The vast majority of people who are presenting have a difficulty, have a real barrier to working in what we call conventional, work or the normal work. There are people who need a supported work environment. And that might mean CE, it might mean something entirely different that we haven't even developed yet. There are people who genuinely need retraining. There are employers that need to take a punt on somebody who's only 50, who's young, who can work till they're 70. 20 years is a bloody long time to have a new career. We need to look entirely differently. That's what we're doing now. We're changing and reviewing how we're going to activate this current generation and the next generation.
Okay, a couple more questions. Ask the Minister why they're incentivising layabouts by increasing the dole year on year in an economy that needs labour. That's from Colin Go with suggestion, freeze the dole, and that will certainly ultimately incentivise people to get out there.
Well, again, we have a proposal at the moment that we've already done for pensioners, is to benchmark social welfare payments against probably either minimum wage or benchmark it against the consumer index and stuff like that. There are options that we're looking at this year. But the reason we increased social welfare payments over the last number of years was because they were decreased during the lost generation, that 10-year period where we had 458,000 people unemployed. It's difficult to live on £198 a week or euros a week. And again, genuinely, the language, the sponger, the layabouts, I haven't met these people.
Yeah.
When I go to job fairs and I work closely with the INOU, I meet wonderful people who have real aspiration and ambition for themselves. Yes, they need help, and maybe a different kind of help than we've given them historically, but they want to work. They want to work in either the social economy or the real economy in a supported environment, and that's what I'm going to make sure that they have. They're going to have ambition for these people.
Ask the Minister about hospitality. Training for that sector. Hotels are being built, but no training programmes such as the Fáilte Ireland ones that were scrapped in 2009. That's from Alan. Everywhere you go, there's a foreign accent serving you a beer or a meal.
Again, I think that's just the nature and the changing environment, that we have an awful lot of new Irish people living in the country, and the vast majority of them want to work and are working.
No, I'm not talking about the people who've come here, to make a life of it here. I'm talking about people who come in from Eastern Europe, spend a couple of years here. They have no difficulty finding a job.
No, they don't, because people who are fit, healthy in both body and mind, the work is there, thankfully. I will tell you, I go to jobs fairs and there are far more jobs than there are people who come through the doors. But that basically makes us have to recognise that the people who are not presenting, we need to look at the reasons why. Confidence is a huge issue. I'll give you an example, and I'll use myself just for argument's sake, so as not to pick on anybody else. After a woman has a baby and takes maybe a year or two out when the children are small, from when they're born, maybe till they go to school, her confidence levels are entirely different to what they would have been when she was working beforehand. We need to recognise that and put in support for people to go back to work, to make it as easy for them to go back to work in a supported way than it was when they left before they had their children. Some women are taking longer at it and is supported and should be supported. But again, there are things that happen because of that need to be addressed. You don't just take 10 years out of the workforce and then bounce back up on a Monday and say, here, I'm ready. Let's go, give me work. We need to recognise the real barriers that are there for women, for men, for young, for old, and actually put in support places to help facilitate the ease with which they should be able to feel they can go back to work.
Some problems intractable. Pat, I'm a traveller, 30 years old. I've applied for 100 jobs. No one will hire me, even though I can read, write and have the junior cert. That's from John. And even what John says, reading and writing and the junior cert is, it's below the skill level that most employers now demand.
Look for, but look, come here, let's not split hairs. We all know that very, very few employers in this country will employ somebody from the travelling community, and so the state needs to step in and do something there. I think when we look at CE this year, when we look at the culture of travellers and how some of their old practices and skill set is being lost, I think we need to look. We can do stuff for people in certain communities to maybe help them keep their skill set, help them be productive in a socially inclusive way. There are things that we can do to address the 8,633 people who present week in, week out, wanting to work.
Yeah. I was on a job reach. I'm a block layer by trade. I was asked to build a wall for the council for an extra €20. That amounted to slave labour. That's from Pat in Waterford. Another one, living on €198 a week isn't restricted to the unemployed. Plenty of working people are left with less than that after they pay their tax, their childcare, their mortgage, medical expenses and all the other expenses not relevant to people who are on benefits. Working should be rewarded. It is not in this country. Everything goes to the unemployed. Isn't that
again? I need to challenge that because that's not true.
Is that not true though? That if you've got a medical card, you don't worry about the doctor. If you've you've got no job, you'll get help with your housing. If you've got no job, you'll be paid so much, and so on and so forth. This is what people are saying.
So let me break
you work
that.
And you end up with less money in your pocket because the state isn't providing you with anything. Whereas when the state is providing you with everything, you actually might have money to spend.
No, I challenge that statement on a number of fronts. First of all, the person that texted you in said that they're left with €198 after paying all their bills. Somebody that's living on a fixed income that only has the state to look after them is starting off gross with €198. They have to pay their rent out of that. They have to pay everything out of it. So there's a vast difference of starting off with 198 or being left with only 198. And the second thing is that it isn't just people who are dependent who are helped. And you have to remember, people have to recognise that the vast majority of people who get paid or a payment from the Department of Social Protection are in benefit. They have recently been working. They're a pensioner who worked all their lives. They're receiving child benefit. We also want to make work pay, which is why we've given children under 6s medical cards, people over 70 medical cards, which is why we've got family income support for people who are on low incomes or can't get full-time work because of either their children's situation or their childcare situation. We've reintroduced treatment benefits, which is one of the most successful schemes and was so oversubscribed last year, and I'm thrilled about that. For people who are in work. I've introduced paid parental leave, again off the back of social insurance contributions. It's unfair to think that anybody who gets money from the Social Protection Department is doing nothing. The vast majority of people are in benefit or in work or who have worked all of their lives.
Yeah, just looking at your budget for 2009, it was around the same as the budget for 2019, at 20.4 billion in 2009.
But the vast difference, Mike, is that in 2009 we were spending 4.1 billion euros on job seekers. This year we're spending less than 2, and that difference of 2 I'm now giving to people in paid parental leave, in the equality of access to our schemes for all of our self-employed people versus our employed people, the treatment benefits, the increases for pensioners. Like, it's not the same. I know you can look at the top line figure and say, oh, the budget hasn't changed, but it's being spent in an entirely different way. Thankfully, because we've had a jobs-led recovery that continues to keep giving, which is great.
Okay, a final question, which kind of summarise the objections that people have to some of this. Now, you've talked about the worthy cases and the people who have hidden problems about getting back to work. But John says, I know several people in my housing estate on the dole and working for cash in hand, getting the HAP allowance, the medical card, etc. Meanwhile, I pay a mortgage and have to pay for everything. Regina sounds like some left-wing political. Is this the new face of Fine Gael?
We've always said we're a broad church, Mike. Can I tell your listener, if he knows some people, and I'm as bold as I am kind and ambitious, if he knows people in his estate who are working on the tick and still claiming social welfare payments, tell him to report them to me.
On that note, Minister for Employment Affairs and Social Protection, Fine Gael TD for Meath East, Regina Doherty, thank you very much.